Please feel free to get up and get food while we're talking. We want to respect your time. Our plan is definitely to be done by 7:30 this evening. If you have a train, you have to leave earlier, we will not be offended. Just to let you know, we're going to have 2 different simulations tonight, along with lots of interactive discussion. We promise not to call on anybody who doesn't want to be called on, or to direct them up here or anything, so you can relax and digest your pizza if that's what you want to do. My name is M. Griffin, volunteer for CCR. With me is Anita Rowe, who is also a volunteer for CCR. We share times together on the peer review committee, and have had the opportunity of sitting in on some of your mediations, and are very grateful for the chances that we've had. Without saying much more, tonight is on identifying and framing the issues. It's something that's covered for about 15 minutes in the training, or has been in the past, and this is a chance to expand on that. Anita is going to begin.
Welcome, everyone. We're going to start with a 5-minute or less review of what you learned in your original training here at CCR. And I do want to thank Danielle Logie, who contributed her notes from that training to make it easier for us. And I put on the board joint, broad, neutral, and concise. Hopefully you remember hearing that in your first training here. Joint, meaning you don't turn to the initiator and say, I see that your issues are X, Y, and Z, and turn to the respondent and say, I see that your issues are A, B, and C. You want it to be a joint presentation of issues for both sides. Broad, you want to encompass a larger category, not going for individual little details. For example, if you remember back to that very first simulation you probably did here at CCR, where the upstairs neighbor had the noisy children and the downstairs neighbor worked during the night and needed to sleep during the day, and would take the broom handle and bang on the ceiling every time the children were loud. If you look at that simulation, you don't want to start listing the issues as the noise in the morning when the children are running around on the hard floor of the kitchen, and then the noise of the television at night, and then the noise of the broom handle from the apartment below. You want to make it the issue of noise, so you don't want to go for those particular details at that point.
The brand of the broom.
That's right. That's right. Mutual. You want them to apply to both parties. You want to think about, an issue that they can both buy into, rather than, again, going, with one and then the other. And hopefully you can come up with a short, concise phrase that will do that. Neutral, you want to avoid inflammatory language or assumptions. You don't want to say, let's talk about the egregiousness of the sexual harassment that took place. You want to instead talk about the charges of sexual harassment or the sexual harassment allegation. You want to sort of pull out those adjectives and characterizations. And concise, when possible, you'd like to list that issue, briefly, and not get into a long, drawn-out discussion, because at that point people start to get confused and think that this is the beginning of crosstalk, and they're going to start, chiming in as well, and you're never going to get the chance to list those issues and to make that, an important part of the CCR model. So that's all I have. One other thing, that after you come up with your list, you do want to try and turn to the parties and say, are there any other issues that I've missed? Anything you think that we should be putting on our agenda? So, having said no more, I think I'll turn it over to you now.
We thought we might start by talking about why identify and frame the issue. Of course, the quick answer is because it's part of the CCR model and the peer review committee is looking for it. But it's really the other way around. It's part of the CCR model, and we're looking for it because it's important. Why? So what's the big deal about identifying issues? We've got 8 quickies on that. I'll take 4 of them, and Anita will take 4. First, by identifying the issues, you're setting the agenda for crosstalk. mediations get wild, and an agenda identifying issues can take some of the chaos out of it. In general, the meeting that's organized is going to accomplish more. I mean, tonight could be chaotic. We're thankful that so many people are here, but this could get quite chaotic, and that's why we have an agenda, and that Anita and I have talked about it. You say, isn't there a place for spontaneity? Sure. And you can be spontaneous as you, after you've created the agenda, you can always depart from it. You can always add to it. But you're departing from something, you're deviating from something. If it were me, I would have a magic marker in one of those rooms and just write right on the wall the agenda. And have them come in and paint it after each meeting, after each mediation. The second reason is it can build credibility for you with your parties. It can demonstrate your understanding of the dispute. Let's face it, there's a lot of folks who get into a conflict, file a court suit, because they want to tell it to the judge. You and I know the judge isn't going to listen real well. It's not impugning the judge, but they aren't going to be the empathic listener or who takes it all in. And if you show that you get it, that you have really listened to them, and here is summarizing what they said, you're building a lot of credibility to the remainder of the session.
Related to what Em has said, you have a list of issues later on in crosstalk when things are going, all different directions. Somebody, is going off on a tangent, or people are starting to vent, and then they keep venting, and they're venting some more, and it's not productive anymore. You've got a tool to rein them in. You've got a tool that, reminds them of what you're there for. And you can say, you know what, at this point, let's move to the next issue on our agenda. We know that, either we've been there ourselves or another trainee has been there. You see the mediator just get that look in their face and, in the middle of a crazy simulation. Oh no, where do I go now? Should I go to caucus or should I stay in crosstalk? It's your agenda which tells you the answer to that question. Have I hit each of the topics that I identified for this crosstalk? If I haven't, if I don't know enough about them, then I'm going to stay in crosstalk and I'm not going to go to caucus yet. So it's a great tool for you. It's a great roadmap for where to go next. You want to make sure that both parties understand the issues. After initial statements, some parties don't get it. I mean, some parties may be so angry or they may be so busy preparing their rebuttal because they're so angry about what they just heard that they don't necessarily, know exactly what the issues are, and they need to hear it from you. And by taking those few minutes to spell it out for them, if they didn't get it the first time, they'll get it then. You want to get the parties engaged. And nothing does that better than an agenda that they can buy into, that they immediately recognize as things they really do want to talk about. In the first couple of years that I mediated for CCR, I almost always started crosstalk by asking my questions. Tell me a little bit more about this. And I had a very wise peer reviewer who said to me, you know what, if you identify those issues correctly, you won't have to start crosstalk. They'll start it for you because they will be so, interested in getting to those important topics. And of course, that was Ann Griffin who taught me that, and I used it every time. And it is a tool to get the parties engaged and anxious to get into crosstalk. Back to you.
One is borrowed from other parts of the model. Identifying the issues is a way of neutralizing toxic language. You all heard this in mediation, something like, and he shot down my brilliant solution and butchered it. And how are you going to pull that into an issue? Well, you can spin it. I know in this political season, spin is a dirty word, but if you think of spinning wool or cashmere or something like that, you can make it softer. You can make it feel shooting down my brilliant solution and butchering it can become a critique of your ideas, or evaluated suggestions, or something like that. Well, that can be done in the issues as well. You can take hostile, offensive, loaded terminology and spin it softly. Identifying issues can also let some very toxic situations or demands fall off the table. Someone demands a full and written apology for what they have done. If you identify the issues, and that's not one of them, that issue may fall off the table. Because we aren't going to write an apology so that you can handle toxic situations as well as language. My final one is a little bit different, and that is multiple issue mediations have better outcomes. Mediation Quarterly, back in the early 90s, had an article in it. The title was The Effective Issue Number on Mediated Outcomes. And it was a field study at a Rochester-type CCR-type center in Rochester. And we've all had many single-issue mediations. You know, it's all about the money, or it's all about moving out of the apartment, or it's all about something. The problem is, could be that a single issue may not set you up for a mediation as well as multiple issues. So rather than trying to collapse everything into one thing, to list a series of issues, if they really are, will help you in the mediation according to this study. What they did is they studied success. Success was rated at the Senate for 6 months. Success was based on getting an agreement that then they called and interviewed parties later and saw did parties follow the agreement? Did they live it out? And they also asked, did you lose or win? And they only counted it as success if there was an agreement, if the parties complied with it, and if no one thought they lost. That was a success. High standard. What they found is in single issue mediations, 13% were successful. In multiple issue mediations, 2 or more, they were 65% successful. So try to put that thing apart and see different compartments can really help.
Okay, at this point, we're going to do a simulation. And we want all of you to play the mediators. We are going to go through initial statements, and then we're going to turn to you immediately and say, volunteer some issues. So we'd like you to get some paper handy and a pen so that you can be taking whatever notes that you would normally take in mediation. We've designed the initial statements so that you shouldn't have to ask any clarifying questions. You should be able to go with just the information that we give you. And, we're going to take just a few minutes to do this, and then we'll do a second simulation towards the end. Does anybody need paper before we start? Stephanie, handed some out in the back there if anybody needs that.
And if you could try to discipline yourself to write down the issues as we're talking, and maybe 1 minute afterwards, and then we'll get into a discussion with them. So let's make it as realistic as possible.
Okay, I'm the initiator, so I'm going to go first. Em and I are both full-time associate professors in conflict resolution at UIC. I've been teaching here about 6 years, Em's been teaching for 8 years at UIC. We've been working for the last 3 years on a book that we feel will revolutionize our field and will result in prestige for both us as well as our department. Well, after working on this book for 3 years, and the publisher is finally ready to print it, but needs to know which one of us is to be listed as the first author of the book. which is important because the first author is presumed to have made the primary contribution. Well, Em and I have not been able to agree on this, and our department head asked us to come here to mediation to try and resolve it. I did all the research and writing, and I believe that I should be listed as the first author. I, designed this study. I, selected the participants. I, administered, the survey. I compiled all the results, did the statistical analysis. I did a, research of all the relevant literature in the field, and I prepared the first draft of the textbook. Frankly, the one who does the most work deserves the most credit. And, in addition to that, being listed as first author is really important for my career advancement. Without this kind of credential, I'm going to be in a very vulnerable position next year when I go up for tenure. Now, Em, already has tenure. He's already authored a book. And this isn't nearly as important for him. And I can't believe he's being so stubborn about this. We had even talked of co-authoring another book after this, but that's probably dead at this point. I'm just so disappointed. I mean, there's just all kinds of ramifications for me, with this first authorship, including the financial ones, because if I don't get tenure, I'm either going to be asked to leave or I'm going to be stuck in a non-tenure position and not, have the same salary potential. I can't believe that this has happened. You had asked us at the beginning, to tell you what we would like to see come out of the mediation, and frankly, I would like Em to realize that I should be listed as the first author.
Well, I'm sure you would, but it's very inappropriate. I mean, Anita said that I've been at UIC for 8 years, and that's true. But before that, for 5 years, I was at NIU. I mean, I am a senior scholar in this field, and I'm recognized as such. She said I already wrote a book. I did. I admit it's kind of ironic that we're here in mediation, but it was a book on identifying the nexus of problematic trajectories in a postmodern society. Now, this was not for the trade. You don't get this at Procter & Gamble's. They even have a Procter & Gamble. This was an academic book, but this brought me quite a bit of renown in my professional association, ACR, and I'm not a new kid on the block. I am a senior researcher on this project. The fact that McGraw-Hill, a major publisher, wants to publish this book was based on my reputation. This isn't a book that went over the transom. This is a book where they came and contacted me. So I'm the reason we're doing this book. Now, of course, Anita performed a lot of the work. She did much of the research. That's true, but it was under my direction. I mean, as we talked about the statistics, she was going to do a t-test where a multiple analysis of variance was called for. I mean, she learned how to cookbook it with SPSS, but, I was the one that said that's the test to do. Ditto on the writing. Yes, she did a lot of the encoding of this material. She put some sweat equity into this. But the intellectual capital is mine. Without my input and without my edits, this research would have been invalid. And without that extensive editing I did, the publisher would never have accepted the manuscript. Look, this book is going to revolutionize the field. And I am convinced it's going to have some popular appeal. It's going to be a crossover book. And unlike purely academic books, it can make some decent money. I mean, my first book, it's the sort of thing, if a few hundred copies sell, you feel good, right people are reading it. But one year I got a check for $57 in royalties. This is not going to be that kind of book. This one's going to go. And we got to get this thing out fast. It is so ridiculous that we're sitting here in a mediation center talking about this when it's got to be out within a month if professors are going to adopt it for next semester. So, we need to settle this thing now. Just to summarize, I think it's ridiculous. I am the senior scholar. The senior scholar is always the first off. And after all I've done for Anita and her career, I'm disappointed. As she mentioned at one point, we were talking about collaborating on another project. That's all. I mean, as I see it, she's blown a wonderful opportunity. I should be the first off. Okay, take a minute and then we'll talk. Some of you who would like to tell us what you came up with on the issues, I'm curious as to how many issues you came up with. How many of you have one issue? Thanks for telling me about that study. We may be stupid, but we aren't dumb. Okay. How many of you have two issues? 3? 4? 5? 6? 7? 8? 9? 8? You're making them up. 9? Okay. You can see that there's a spread. It doesn't mean everybody but you is wrong. I mean, there are different ways of slicing these things. I will tell you that Anita and I have talked about these, and we have come up with our list that at some point we'll let you know. But more important is, what is your list? Is there someone who would say, I'll run mine by the group?
Or you just call me one at a time.
Joe?
All of them, or?
Which would you rather, one at a time or all of them? One at a time. Let's mention one.
Well, one issue that was common for was financial issue for different reasons. So one person issue was future earning potential or career applications. And the other was financial regarding royalties.
Okay, and I really appreciate you trying to bridge those issues, because they could be very different issues, but they are very, very different expressions of a money issue. Okay. Anybody else have anything like that in the same vein, picking up on the money idea?
Tenure and career advancement are the,
Okay, and that broadens out a little bit, because there's a whole lot involved in tenure, and career advancement is broader. So you've made it broader, and we both have those. You've got, and again, anything you can do to take two disparate or even desperate things that people have said and legitimately fold them so that they will recognize, gee, we are talking about much of the same thing. That can be very helpful.
Recognition, professional recognition.
Professional recognition, are you suggesting that still picks up the same idea? Now we've gotten off of the financial, but we certainly picked up on career advancement. I didn't say it that much. I didn't, later on, in caucus, I would say, hey, the college is pushing me to make full professor, and I'm sort of dead in the water right now. I didn't say that, but even the way I presented it showed that this was real important to me, how I was, reputation and everything. So, legitimate deal.
I was going to use the word reputation.
Reputation.
And I think they would recognize that as an issue for both of them. It might be easy to talk about.
Say it again?
It might be easy for them to both recognize it.
Yeah. Okay. I forgot to make that announcement about turning off the cell phones and stuff. Okay. Ready to pick up a new issue?
Right.
Okay.
How about investment, your intellectual capital versus this time?
Okay, yeah, and in fact, when Anita and I talked about that one first, I had put those as separate issues. And then the problem with that, if we made them separate issues, would be what?
Separate,
Yeah, they are separate, and I'd say, yeah, if we were talking about intellectual capital, and Anita would feel that that was,
Well, I certainly want to be talking instead about, the research and the graphic.
oh, get off of that. Yeah, that's not an issue. Yeah, that would be the problem, but if you fold it together, and how did you put it?
Investment.
Investment, yeah. That was very close to what we had down here. We put contribution to the finished product. And you're picking up on the things that Danielle suggested so many years ago when she was only 13 years old. She said this, but to keep it fairly broad, to keep it brief. They don't have to be declarative sentences. Want to stick on this one a little more, or?
When we are facing is how to divide recognition and contributions. Is that too long?
What do you think, Anita?
Could you repeat that so that
How to
everyone?
how to divide recognition for contributions.
It tends to pick up two. I don't want to weigh yet, but you know what I'm talking about. So maybe we can pull that aside.
For a second. We like it, but we thought that might be better pulled apart. Yes.
That almost sounds like a different way that I used to just credit. And I heard somebody talking about being credit. So you look at the state concept of contribution. Though they certainly are getting linked to the parties.
Oh, they are very distinct. Credit is sort of inflow. Things I'm getting, contribution is what I put out.
Right,
And so we probably would not want to combine those two.
right, that's what I was saying, I
Yeah.
would separate that.
Yeah. Okay. Ready for a new issue?
I
No,
was gonna
I'll
add
stay on that
I
one.
kind
Go,
of was
Susan.
thinking, calling it dispersion of work.
Dispersion of work.
Like division of labor.
Right, well, I heard both of you saying, well, I did this, and so.
I'll tell you what, if it were me, I would try and stay away from the word dispersion. It's just not in our talking vocabulary, in the average parties. Now, we're professors, but I would probably want to try and put it in more common lingo, if at all possible.
I had just used the word work, but and what I meant by that was kind of what you've already talked about in terms of contribution to finished product, and I like that better, because my concern when I was writing work was I thought Anita might identify more with that than you would, because she was talking about the worker bee type of thing,
Good.
you were more directional. So when I hear contribution, I think that captures that sense without getting into whether work would be, even though it's a general term, might be more related to one subject than another.
Let's see if we can get another issue in the neck. Yes, Russell.
What will their future relationship? What's the future of their relationship?
I told you. Good. In almost any mediation, the parties are going to have to be together again in the future or interact. That's one of those ones that you can pull out, even if they haven't said it. And there is no future. She blew it, But hey, we're in the same department. Our chair sent us. You talk about embarrassing. Our chair sent us fighters on conflict resolution to mediation because we can't get along. Does it happen? Sure it does. But something along that line works, and we wrote future relationship. Have any others? Yes.
Along that same line, I would also add impact on relationship with colleagues. That could be a
to the battle in Educt and send us to the conflict resolution center. We didn't have that. Why didn't we have that?
Well, I think, we considered it to be under future relationship. Because we did talk about, the fact that,
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll say, I'm sure we had that.
yeah.
Future relationships. Yeah. If we didn't have that in mind, we should have. Yes.
The next book.
The next book. And that could be a separate relationship, and again, we could say, there is no next book. We can't even agree on this after it's written. On the other hand, the way we did it, as we thought, was to put that under future relationship. There's an apartment, there's a book, talking to each other, are we having a drink together, whatever we wanted to talk to, we put under that. And you have to decide, if everything else was just one issue, would I have pulled that out to get another issue? Yes.
I put down timeless, or
Timeless.
timeless,
I pushed, we gotta get that thing out. Should we talk about our last one? Why don't you talk about it? Because you talk.
Yeah, well, I told Em that something that I like to do is, the last issue that I always put on my list is, how do we resolve this case today? Because I think it makes a nice segue to caucus. It changes the focus from looking back on the dispute towards looking forward towards resolution. I also feel that it gives me an opening in crosstalk to start to talk about any ideas that may have come up during crosstalk about resolving the dispute. And in this case, what Em and I put is how to resolve this quickly, so that we would bring into that discussion of resolution this idea that it really must be taken care of right away, and they don't have the time to mess around with this for another couple of months.
But did you, how we resolve this issue today and resolve it quickly as two separate ones, or did you just rephrase it to say how we resolve this quickly?
Yeah, no, I certainly meant to say it, I don't think we typed it in that way, but if I were doing this in real life, I would be saying today, how we can resolve this today without any further delay.
And we did type up how to quickly resolve this, because that picked up not only what happens with us, but the publishing looming out there, that there would, we didn't make those separate issues, but the quickly came in to be part of the resolution. I have heard 3 of our 5, we have 5, that's very well discussed, how to resolve quickly, the future relationships, the contribution to the finished product. Do you have